Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our webinar today. Just a couple of quick housekeeping notes as we get started and people file into the meeting. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties on today's meeting, please send a message to Renee Roberge and we'll be able to help you out with that. Additionally, today's meeting will take place in English. We are running a second webinar that will take place in French on December 15th. If you or any of your colleagues are interested in attending this webinar, we encourage you to register for it. And lastly, we've got a couple of presentations today, after which we'll be moving into a Q&A session. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box, and then we will go through and answer them after the presentations. In order to save time and make sure that we get to as many questions as we can, if you see a question that's the same as your question, please upvote it instead of typing the question again, and that will help us to get through as many questions as we can. Now, in order to get started, I'd like to pass it over to Dr. Charu Kaushik.
Thank you so much, Victoria. Welcome, everyone. It's great to see so many people online. Yeah. Welcome, everyone, and it's great to have you all here. Just switching computers for technical glitches a little bit here. It's a pleasure to have so many people and very excited to hold this first applicant webinar, which will be in English. I do want to, however, start out by saying that this seminar or this webinar is being hosted by the CIHR Institute of Infection and Immunity, which is located in Hamilton, which is the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe people. It's covered by the Upper Canada treaties in the land that's protected by Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. I am, however, today joining you from CIHR headquarters, where I'm here with my colleague, Adrian Moda. And I want to acknowledge that Ottawa is located on the unceded, unsurrendered territories of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We honor the Algonquin people as the customary keepers of this territory and extend our respect to all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, since this is a virtual meeting and many people are joining from across the country. With that, I would like to introduce my colleague, Dr. Chelsea Gable, who is a co-lead on the REDI initiative. As many of you know, we have two streams on this year as we're starting this off. And I'd like to introduce Dr. Chelsea Gable, the Scientific Director for the Institute of Indigenous Peoples Health. So Chelsea, over to you.
Great. All right. Well, thanks very much, Charu. So yes, my name is Chelsea Gable. I am Red River Métis. I'm originally from Rivers, Manitoba. I'm a citizen of the Manitoba Métis Federation. I'm also a professor at McMaster University in the Department of Health, Aging, and Society, and have a cross appointment with the Indigenous Studies Department. And as Charu noted, I am the scientific director of the Institute of Indigenous Peoples Health, which actually is also located at McMaster University. I've been in that role for just over a year. I started last October 1st, 2024. I'm very excited to step into the co-lead with Charu on REDI 2.0. I'm very, very passionate about mentorship and training the next generation of Indigenous health research. I was the former lead of the National Coordinating Center, which is a center that coordinates all soon-to-be 10 network environments for Indigenous health research, which are very, very much supportive of mentoring and mentoring our next generation of Indigenous health researchers. And then I was also the lead of the Ontario Indigenous Mentorship Network, which was a CIHR-funded initiative focused on training the next generation of Indigenous health scholars. So really wonderful to be here, and I'm very, very excited to be co-leading this initiative with III. So do we have Grandfather Vince? I gave it an extra little long bio just to give us time. I know our elder is having a little bit of technical difficulty. So do we have Grandfather Vince on? Can
someone let me? We
Not
still have some technical difficulties, but he may be able to
Okay.
join on for the closing.
Okay, great. So I will not include, I'm not going to talk about grandfather events or do his bio. Maybe I'll wait, Josh, until the end then, if that works. Okay. So maybe I will then, True, I'll pass it back to you, and I think we can probably move right into to Adrian and some of our presentations.
Okay, thank you, Chelsea. Thank you for that nice introduction. And I think it's nice for people to know that, we have really good representation on this initiative from both the institutes as well as the corporate lead. So it's my great pleasure to introduce to you Adrian Mota, who is the Vice President of Research Programs. And he is the corporate lead on this program with Chelsea and myself. So Adrian, over to you for some introductory remarks.
Thanks. Everyone, good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you may be. We're excited to have you here today, and it's a privilege for me to be here with you today on this second iteration of the REDI program. So I won't take up a lot of your time. I look forward to maybe participating in the discussion and answering questions, but as you know, REDI is an early career transition award designed to support trainees from specific underrepresented groups as they launch their research faculty career in Canada. REDI is an important program for CIHR. It's a priority. And why is that? I don't think I need to convince anyone that diversity matters in science. My good colleague, Kara, who's no longer with CIHR, but used to talk to us at length about, not only the gaps in diversity of the NPIs holding the grants or the people holding the grants and the awards, but how that translated into the science that gets done, who's included in research. And we know that diversity leads to excellent science. We also know that some people are underrepresented in science, and we have good data. Won't go through that now, that shows that. And that's why this program exists. That's why there are specific eligibility cohorts to really, help fill some of that gap. So really, REDI helps Canada capitalize on the full extent of the tremendous scientific talent by addressing those gaps in training, support, and representation, and transitioning to independent research careers. So thank you for being here today. Look forward to hearing your questions. And with that, I will hand it back over to Charu, please.
Thank you, Adrian. And I know that the main purpose of this is to answer as many questions as we can today. So I'm just going to jump right into a few slides to go over the background and overview of the funding opportunity. I'm sure most people have looked at it. If you haven't, there's a lot more detail than what we are going to go through today on the website, including a frequently asked question, which we have from all the data from last time. So we won't deep dive into that, but feel free to make use of that resource. Okay, next slide, please. So as Adrian mentioned and Chelsea mentioned, so REDI is a research excellence and diversity program, is a transition to faculty program. The transition from trainee to faculty is a critical point where many, especially from the underrepresented groups, leave due to systemic barriers like racism, colonialism, gender bias, and other form of discrimination. And we know, and as Adrian mentioned, there's lots of data to show that this has led to decreased diversity in faculty and leadership within the Canadian academic ecosystem. And we know there's evidence to show that diversity leads to better science, greater creativity, and productive innovations. This is true not just for academic places, but even business cases are now showing, and business organizations believe that there is more productive innovation if there's greater creativity, which is brought in by different diverse views. So while support is needed at all career stages, the REDI program focuses on the diverse cohorts at the faculty and entry point. So I want to emphasize that this is a cohort-based approach because we know that if you bring one diverse voice at the table, it doesn't lead to change. People frequently leave organizations because they're the only person advocating for change. So REDI is a two-phase, 6-year transition program with a strong mentorship component designed to increase diversity among highly qualified independent health researchers from underrepresented groups in Canada. And we want to flag that the underrepresented groups as defined by the Government of Canada include a few different populations. Not all of those are included in what we are proposing to fund. But the intent is, as the program goes on and hopefully expands, that we'll be able to bring in more populations. We get asked frequently why we're not doing that right away. And the answer to that is we are trying to do this in a thoughtful way where we are engaging the right communities so that we can provide the right supports when we bring in those communities. Next slide. So the specific objectives of this funding opportunity are to promote research independence and academic research career readiness for highly qualified trainees. And even though we say postdoctoral researchers, clinicians, PhD holding research associates, we know that there's a broader variety than this of career trajectories. So we are putting this as something to start with, but if you feel like you don't fit in this, but otherwise this program is right for you, please reach out. We are looking at case by case on these qualifications. The second objective is to increase the number of funded researchers from specific underrepresented groups conducting excellent research who secured their first independent research faculty position in a Canadian academic, health system, or research institution. And then thirdly, to provide funded researchers from these underrepresented groups with early career support to enhance the probability of future success in obtaining independent funding and launching successful research faculty careers in Canada. So these are the three objectives. The next slide. We just want to recap for everybody online that this is, as Adrian mentioned, this is the second iteration of REDI. In REDI 2022, which was the first launch, it was open to racialized women and Black scholars, again, with the same kind of qualifications. 43 awardees were given the award from 25 different institutions from 6 provinces and 1 US state. The research project spanned across the 4 pillars of CIHR: biomedical, clinical, health services, social, cultural, environment, and population health. And we have very good data to show early success of this program. As of July 2026, almost 2 years into the program, more than half of the awardees were either had transitioned to phase 2, in other words, obtained faculty position, or were in various stages of moving towards securing their first independent researcher faculty position. So we know that this program really helps facilitate these transition towards independent careers. I'll hand it over to my colleague Chelsea to go over sort of the REDI 2025 highlights. So Chelsea, over to you.
Great, thanks very much, Charu. Okay, so just to build on Charu, so REDI 2.0 really sort of builds on the solid foundation of REDI 1.0, and it strengthens our commitment to scientific excellence by supporting research environments that reflect diversity, equity, inclusion, and respect for Indigenous rights and self-determination. And so to do this, REDI 2.0 will have 2 streams of support. One stream is for scholars who self-identify as Black, any gender, racialized women, or racialized gender diverse individuals. This stream builds directly on REDI 1.0 and uses an expanded intersectional framework for race and gender that includes racialized individuals with underrepresented gender identities. So this would include, but not limited to, trans, bigender, multigender, genderqueer, gender fluid, and non-binary scholars. And like in REDI 1.0, eligibility will be determined using the Tri-Agency Self-ID questionnaire. A new stream now is dedicated for First Nations, Inuit, Métis scholars in alignment with a tri-agency policy on Indigenous citizenship and member affirmation. And this stream is inclusive of all gender identities. And so IAPH and I am very excited to be now moving forward as co-leads with III in this initiative, really building on the success of REDI 1.0 and expanding its impact for early career Indigenous research. And just for a really quick little bit of context, III and IAPH, since I really started, have conducted a number of Indigenous engagement sessions involving nearly 300 participants to gather important feedback from communities to really ensure that the program meets the distinct needs of Indigenous researchers. So next slide, please. So there are 2 phases across a maximum of 6 years involved with REDI 2.0. So phase 1 is the mentored phase, and this includes a research allowance, a stipend, mentorship and career development at $90,000 a year. Applicants will propose a research project or a research program to be the foundation for the independent research program as future faculty members. And this phase is focused on mentorship and career development planning. Phase 2 is the independent phase, which includes a research allowance, salary support, faculty mentorship, and one-to-one matching from the host institution. So this is at least $240,000 per year. Awardees are expected to transition to an independent research faculty position, marking the start of phase 2. So this is within 2 to 3 years of the funding start date. So the total funds per applicant are up to $660,000 for up to 6 years. Forums will be held every 2 years of the program where awardees, mentors, partners, guest speakers, and CIHR will gather to promote research independence, to explore success factors, so what worked, what didn't, challenges experienced, and really sort of foster a collaborative network and promote culturally sensitive mentorship practice. So new for this iteration is a $5,000 per year community engagement and knowledge mobilization supplement, and this will be available to all applicants for outreach, for engagement, for collaboration and knowledge mobilization with Indigenous, Northern, or underrepresented communities relevant to their research or knowledge mobilization activities. So next slide, please. So this slide has just a few more background pieces for the program. This iteration of REDI represents a $34.5 million contribution to fund approximately 50 awards and 50 knowledge mobilization supplements across 15 funding pools, 1 general pool, and 14 specific pools across institute and partner mandates. For eligibility, applicants for either stream must be a trainee, such as a postdoctoral researcher, a clinician, or a PhD holding research associate, working under the supervision of an independent researcher. A minimum of 1 year is required to be spent in the mentorship phase. And finally, there's a list of partners shown on the right. Next slide, please. And this table really just expands on the final point from the previous slide, showing all the pools available for this iteration of REDI. Details for each pool, including the specific research support by each, is available in the full funding opportunity text. And I will just turn it over to, I think, Hadil.
Yes, thank you,
Great.
Chelsea. So I'm here on behalf of Heart and Stroke. I'm the manager of the Strategic Research Initiative at the Research Department. And I'd like to say that Heart and Stroke is so proud to align with the REDI objectives, which focus on equity, diversity, and inclusion as drivers of research excellence. It also forms part of our renewed Indigenous strategy. So for this call, Heart and Stroke is supporting research areas that reflect our mission priorities. And these are improving prevention, treatment, and recovery for heart heart disease and stroke, with a strong emphasis on health equity. So this includes priority conditions such as cardiac arrest, heart failure, congenital heart disease, stroke, but also women's heart and brain health, as well as initiatives led by Indigenous, Black, and equity-deserving communities. Heart and stroke strategy for investing in people is clear, as you will see on this slide. We believe that talent is the foundation of innovation. So the areas that heart and stroke funds are across all CIHR pillars. So it's biomedical, clinical, health services, and also population health. And through programs that support researchers at every stage. So from trainees to early career investigators, but also leading to senior career investigators. We've recently expanded in the past few years our personnel awards, and as you see, we now have initiatives for open postdocs, women's health research focus, but we also have Black and Indigenous scholars. So these research programs are there to create a diverse pipeline for future leaders within the cardiovascular and cerebrovascular fields. And so by partnering with CIHR through REDI, this help and through our funding to co-fund together awards that help the underrepresented scholars transition to independence, strengthening Canada's research capacity, but also ensuring that the next generation of scientists reflect the diversity of the communities we serve. And so together we will be building a research ecosystem that is inclusive, collaborative, but also focused on impact. And so that's why we're really excited to be part of this partnership. And we really wish the luck to everyone. And with that, I'll hand it back to you, Chelsea.
Okay, great. All right, thanks very much. So I think we are now going to pivot a little bit. I believe our elder is present now. So I am going to introduce our elder grandfather, Vince, who has an incredible bio. So I'm going to just do a quick introduction before I pass it on to him. Vince is a father of 4, a grandfather of 11, a great-grandfather of 3. He's a status treaty band member of Walpole First Nation. He is of the Loon Clan. Vince has worked in the Ottawa Native Friendship Centre for 44 years and retired as of January 14th, 2022. And during this period, he received an honors Bachelor of Social Work degree and a certificate from the University of Oklahoma, working with adults who have experienced substance misuse, and started a course with the George Brown College on the history of Indigenous culture. Vince provides cultural presentations, opening and closing prayers like the one he's doing for us today, and also blanket exercises. And so Vince, welcome. And I have this tobacco right here for you that I'm going to pass virtually, and just turn it over to you to do our opening.
Sorry to interrupt, Vince. You can unmute yourself.
Oh, sorry. Okay, can you hear me?
Yep, we got you. Thank you.
Oh, all right. Forgive me. I'm not very good at technology. I had to have my son help me here. So, bonjour to each and every one from all across Canada and to your respective territories that you are in. I acknowledge on behalf of each and every one of you to Kijamnadu, the creator, and give thanks to all of us as humankind. Bonjour, Kiwanzits Dishnakas Mon Dudem, Kiwanzits na Bikajwan Anishnabena Parawarami Dunstaba. Miigwech Kishamnadu. Kian Kanagiga Gego Shitsuan. Miigwech na Namashumas Jesus. Tibiwasien Nungum. Miigwech Nukmas Debigizes. Tibiwasien Dibignigan Dibigagna. Miigwech Kokmekwa. Jibi Mission Bimadwina. Jimisian Minjum. Jimisian Nabish. Jimisian Wisingagak. Minwa. Jimisian Nisuin. Miigwech. Sama, Kiwanzin Syndicate Miigwechna, Kiwanzin Syndicate Miigwechna, Anishinaabe Mon, Algonquin territory that I am a visitor of. I acknowledge and give thanks for this opportunity to share. Just an acknowledgement. Jimisuyan na hao. Miigwech Kichimanatu. I invite each and every one that are taking part in this gathering today, all their ancestors, and that we may utilize the abilities as humankind have, is what we will see, hear, smell, speak, taste, and feel. May we do it with a clear mind, a good heart, and a strong spirit. Ahau. Miigwech.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you very much, Grandfather Vince. We really appreciate you opening us up. Glad you could get on in a good way. So I am now going to introduce Vita Lee with Program Design and Delivery from CIHR to present some slides. So I'll turn it over to you, Vita Lee.
Great. Thank you so much, Chelsea, and thank you, Grandfather Vince, for your opening remarks. So if you can go to the next slide. So my name is Vita Lee. I am pleased to be joining you, albeit virtually, from Ottawa, which I acknowledge is built on the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe peoples. So for today, I do want to walk you through the eligibility requirements for nominated principal applicants and their mentors for the REDI program. And this information is critical because it does ensure that you know whether or not you qualify before applying to this funding opportunity. So the first piece is that the nominated principal applicant does need to be a trainee by the funding start date. And if memory serves me correctly, the funding start date is in February of 2027. So we do expect you to be a trainee by then. In addition to that, you do, and I apologize because I don't like reading slides, but I think it's important that I do this given the questions that we've been that have been submitted so far. So the applicant does need to be a PhD holding postdoctoral researcher at a CIHR eligible academic health system or research institution, or a clinician holding an MD, DVM, DDS, or PhD holding allied health professional in either postdoctoral positions or a faculty position denoting independence in clinical responsibilities, but not in research at a CIHR eligible academic health system or research institution. We also include trainees that are research associates or equivalent who are PhD holding researchers employed at a CIHR eligible institution. I did see a question regarding this, so I'll hone in on this. So the applicant does need to be a Canadian citizen, a permanent resident, or a citizen of another country. However, applicants with Canadian citizenship or permanent residency are eligible to hold their Phase 1 award outside of Canada, with exception for applicants to this cerebrovascular and or cardiovascular health funding pools. So for those pools, you do need to hold your Phase 1 award within Canada. Otherwise, you can hold your Phase 1 award outside of Canada. However, for Phase 2, the expectation is that you hold your award within Canada. So we do have guidelines and information within our REDI Phase 2 transition process guidelines document, and that is hyperlinked within our funding opportunity. So applicants who are neither Canadian citizens or permanent nor permanent residents are only eligible to hold their Phase 1 award in Canada, with the exception that I mentioned earlier with when it comes to that specific pool. Now, when it comes to the primary mentor, we do expect that that mentor be an independent researcher with an academic appointment and be either the applicant's current supervisor or principal investigator who will function as the NPA's or the applicant's mentor for the Phase 1 REDI project. So we do have a note at the bottom here where, and this is more towards the host institutions, we don't require you to guarantee an offer to applicants for Phase 2. So hopefully that's clear, but if you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A function for this meeting. If you can go to the next slide, please. So continuing with the eligibility criteria, so the applicant must not currently hold or have previously held a CIHR REDI award. You do need to include your SGVA training module certificate. So that's the sex and gender-based analysis training module. And then when it comes to Indigenous health research and or research involving Indigenous peoples, the following requirements must be met. So for Stream A, so this is for racialized applicants, the NPA must provide evidence of having meaningful and culturally safe involvement with Indigenous peoples. In addition, we do require that at least one of the mentors self-identifies as being Indigenous, so First Nations, Inuit, or Métis, and or having provided evidence of having meaningful and culturally safe involvement with Indigenous peoples. Now for Stream B, the NPA does need to self-identify as being Indigenous themselves and provide evidence of having meaningful and culturally safe involvement with Indigenous peoples. And at least one of the mentors does need to self-identify as being Indigenous and or provide evidence of having meaningful and culturally safe involvement with Indigenous people. So this is all information that's available on ResearchNet, but I did want to emphasize this in case this was missed. So next slide, please. So in terms of the evaluation criteria, so this is important for both the applicant and for reviewers. So both will be required to use these criteria to assess and articulate their applications. So there is a number of sub-criterion for each criteria. So I won't go into details because I do want to give folks an opportunity to ask us questions. And I see there's a number of questions. So just in general terms, in terms of criteria, we do expect that people comment on experience, training, contributions, career goals, and career development plan, proposed research for both Phase 1 and 2, mentorship plan, and equity, diversity, and inclusion. Next slide, please. I'm almost done. So this is an overview of the how to apply a task within ResearchNet. So I won't go into details, but if you are submitting your proposal in English, the maximum number of pages is 10 pages. Whereas if you're submitting in French, you do have up to 12 pages. And then the last piece I'll mention there's a couple more things I want to mention. So there's supplemental application information. This is where you're articulating your budget. But I do want to mention, just because I saw this in the Q&A, is the tri-agency CV. So this is a requirement for this application. And there's 3 sections of the tri-agency CV. So there's the personal statement, most significant contributions and experiences, and supervisory and mentorship activities. And we do have a number of guidance on our website to help guide you through this process. But if you do have any questions, please let us know. And then the last piece I'll mention before we go to the next slide is that although we do have a general pool, we do have a number of specific funding pools. So if you're applying to those funding pools, this is where you'll indicate this in your application process. So next slide, please. So in terms of your proposal, I did want to highlight that we do expect you to organize your proposal within the specific headers that I have identified here on the slide. So there's experience, training, and contributions, career goals and career development plan, proposed research for both phases 1 and 2, mentorship plan, and equity, diversity, and inclusion. So these are identical to your main evaluation criteria. So we do expect you to have your proposal organized as such. And this is within your 10-page, if you're submitting in English, of course, proposal, or 12 pages if you're submitting in French. Next slide, please. And just wanted to pay attention to the additional materials that should be submitted with your application. So of course, this is a 2-phased funding opportunity where we have the mentored phase and the independent phase. And for the mentored phase, we want your letters of support from your mentors. So those should be included. I mentioned earlier your SGBA, so your sex and gender-based analysis certificate completion should be included. If you're requesting a community engagement and a knowledge mobilization supplement, that should be included as well as an additional attachment. And if relevant to your proposal, Indigenous engagement experience should be included as a document. And for those who hold a faculty appointment but are not independent researchers, they should include a letter from their host institution stating that they're, or confirming that they're not an independent researcher. And as noted below, additional details are available in the funding opportunity on ResearchNet. And I should add before we move to the next slide that supplementary funding is not intended to offset costs associated with standard academic knowledge mobilization activities. So these include publication fees or similar dissemination expenses. So next slide, please. And so without any order, preference, or importance, I did want to highlight a number of tools and resources that have been developed by the team. So the first is the REDI Phase 2 Transition Process Guidelines. This is super important, particularly if you've been awarded at Phase 1, so that you know what to expect and what to include in your transition package. The second is important for Phase 1, and this is the information letter on the primary mentor role. So this includes information or details that are important to capture in your letter or letter of support from the mentor. And what's new for this competition is the partner linkage tool. It's not mandatory. So responding to one of the questions from the Q&A, it's not a mandatory task. It is just something that's available for folks. And it's for individuals who are available and interested in being mentors, and also for individuals who are interested in being mentored. So it's for both the mentee and the mentor. Again, not a required task. It's just an available resource for you. As from the 1.0 funding opportunity, we had a frequently asked questions, so an FAQ page available for folks. So if you're interested, please refer to that, and that is linked through our funding opportunity. And lastly, and similarly to our 1.0 funding opportunity, we did have a decision tree tool. And this is specifically to the self-identification requirement. That's super key to the eligibility criteria. So if you're curious and wondering if you're eligible, this is a great tool to use. It's not a be all that ends all. We do need to have your submission to be able to determine eligibility. But if you have any questions, I think that's a great first step. And we also have the contact center's information here. I do want to highlight before I go to the timelines that whenever you have any questions about this funding opportunity, it does get forwarded to the REDI team. So you are getting responses back from the REDI team. And so just rest assured that the appropriate people are responding to your questions and queries. And then if you can go to the next slide. Thank you. So as mentioned by Victoria earlier, we do have our French applicant webinar coming up in 2 weeks, so on December 15th. But otherwise, our application deadline is in the spring, so June 16th of 2026. And our notice of decision is in January of 2027. And then our funding start date is also in February of 2027. So there's quite a bit of time. However, if you have any questions, please do reach out to us. And I think we're at a Q&A period, if I'm not mistaken.
Thanks, Vitaly. I think the next thing to do is that I think there might be a slide of some frequently asked
Of course.
Q&A. So I'm going to go through a few of those. And then I see there's a lot of Q&As that are coming up. You know, if people want to upvote some of them, then it'll be easier for us to start with that. Otherwise, we'll just start doing some of the, pick and choose. So if you have a question that's very similar to yours, just upvote it so we can answer those questions first. Okay, so some frequently asked questions that we have received in previous iteration, as well as we're getting now. I'm X years into my postdoc. Can I apply? I self-identify as XYZ. Am I eligible? Can I change institutions? How many mentors can I have? So I'll repeat again what Vitaly just said, that there's a lot of these questions that were there last time. So please make use of the frequently asked question page on the REDI website, and you will find many of your questions are already answered there. So we're not starting from fresh. Hopefully you've taken a look, but feel free to do that. Are there plans to broaden eligibility to include other underrepresented groups? As I said before, when I was going through some of the slides, that pending continued support, the intent is to relaunch REDI in future years with eligibility open to other underrepresented groups. Who gets added and in what sequence depends on how best we can resolve issues to make sure that the addition of additional groups addresses issues around eligibility, around data, etc. So, for example, the Indigenous stream was added because we spent the last 2.5 years engaging with Indigenous communities to identify what their needs are, so we can make sure that Indigenous scholars are successful and are and can launch their careers successfully. Also issues around eligibility. So just flagging that, yes, the intent is for the program to be relaunched. What time intervals, and I see some of that in the chat, depends on how quickly we can pull together resources, which are always new funding. We are not cutting any funding. This is new monies every time. So we have to form partnerships. We have to identify new funds. And we have to address issues around including that particular underrepresented group. So that's why you see a little bit variability in the timelines. Are there restrictions on the number of years since the applicant has completed their PhD? This is different from many other competitions. There is no restriction on the number of years that an applicant is out of PhD, as long as they are still not independent. Right, so they are trainees or by funding start date, or they have finished their training, but they're not an independent faculty position. If you have any questions, they must maintain a trainee status though during the phase 1. So if you have any specific questions, we will answer questions one at a time. So just write to us, and whoever. Basically all the different branches, work together to give you a complete answer. Can I apply to this funding opportunity if I'm not a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident? So as Vitaly said very clearly, yes, but you must hold both phase 1 and 2 in Canada. So if you're not a Canadian citizen or permanent resident, you cannot apply for another country. The goal of this intent of this program is to increase diversity in faculty in Canada. So Canadian citizens and permanent residents can do phase 1 somewhere, but they have to come back to Canada. If you're not a Canadian citizen or permanent resident, you can hold it as long as you will stay in Canada. Can I hold this award outside of Canada? Again, you can hold this phase 1 if you are a Canadian citizen or permanent resident, except for the Heart and Stroke Foundation, whose funding rules require that you have to hold everything in Canada. Your primary place of employment or primary appointment for phase 2 must be within Canada. So those are examples of some frequently asked questions. There are many that I'm seeing in the chat that you can actually go and look at the frequently asked questions. Anything that's very specific to your situation, just write us, shoot us an email, and we'll be able to reply to those. So Victoria, I believe you're going to read out the questions that are upvoted, and then we can figure out who can answer those questions. And we have a good amount of time. We have about 35 minutes for that.
Perfect. All right, let's try to get through as many questions as we can. So I'm going through the Q&A and starting with the most upvoted questions. So as Cherry mentioned, if there's questions that you agree with, please go through and upvote them. I'll start off with a question that I believe I'm directing to PDD, and it is, what happens if one cannot reach phase 2 after the 3 years due to many different reasons? So I think I'll turn to Vitaly and Brittany first for your answers.
Course. So I'll start off with this one and just confirming that Brittany and I will be alternating for these questions. So for this, you would reach out to us and well in advance. And if you're not reaching out to us, you'd be one of us would be reaching out to you. We anticipate that some may not be able to transition within the time period that they've articulated in their application. And so there is flexibility. It's just that there's a maximum in terms of the amount that can be dispersed for this funding opportunity. So if you're not able to transition, you can transition later. It just means that you have less funding available for phase 2. But if you have any questions about that, you can certainly reach out to us. But I think I'll leave it at that, Victoria, and we can move on to the next question.
Absolutely. So the next question pertains to research topics. In terms of the research topics, should it be relevant to the underrepresented population, or could it be any research topic?
Brittany, are you good for that one?
Yes.
Yeah, I can take that one on. So
yeah, of course. Go ahead, Sharu.
Sorry, I didn't hear you, Vitaly, who you were asking. I figured it's a science question, so I can answer it. Yeah, so it does not have to be specifically dedicated just to questions related to the underrepresented community from which you're coming. It can be any topic in science. In fact, we have pools that relate to very specific topics, right? So cardiovascular, for example, if you are a racialized female and you're applying for this, doesn't mean that you can only do your research in other racialized female populations. It's open to anything that can be done. In fact, if you look at, and that's another good example, is you can go take a look at the previous REDI awardees and see the selection or the different topics on which they were doing. So we had many people on biomedical, clinical, other topics, and not all of them relate to, many do. That's one of the reasons for excellent research, is that many of them will address issues that are particularly relevant to their community, but not all of them do that. So maybe the PDD folks want to add something to it.
No, I think you captured it perfectly, unless Brittany, you wanted to add.
No, that sounds good.
Perfect. In that case, we'll move on to the next question, which I believe is another eligibility question for our PDD colleagues. Can you spend less than 2 years in phase 1? Is there a minimum amount of time? For example, what if we are offered an independent appointment early on in phase 1?
Brittany, did you want to take that on?
Sure, I can take this one. So similar to what Vitaly had answered for going over the number of years in phase 1. Also, if there's a request for spending less than the 2 years in phase 1, that needs to be directed to our CIHR REDI staff
to confirm, the minimum requirement for phase 1 is 1 year. Ideally, it's between that 2 to 3 year time spent in phase 1. Thanks, Victoria.
Perfect. All right. Next up, I have another eligibility question. Are there any diversity or eligibility requirements for the primary mentor?
No, there aren't any. However, we do have information that should guide the letter of support that should be appended to the submission for the primary mentor. So definitely have a look at that. But there is no specific requirement that would deem you ineligible or eligible for the primary mentor.
Excellent. Moving on to our next question. To apply, do we need to currently be in a postdoc or research associate position?
I can take this one. So as long as you're in one of the positions again outlined in the eligibility criteria, so the PhD holding postdoctoral researcher, clinician holding, or a PhD holding allied health professional, either postdoc position or faculty position, denoting independence in clinical responsibilities, or number 3, a research associate. Any of those eligibility criteria, it would be by the funding start date. So by next February 2027, that's when you'd have to be holding that position.
Fantastic. Thank you, Brittany. Our next question is, how would the experience, training, and contributions in the proposal section be different from the tri-agency narrative CV section?
Oh, that's a good one. And that's on me. So as noted by Victoria, we are using the tri-agency CV. So it does depend on how you articulate this information within your submission. If you have, and unfortunately I don't see the question on my screen, but if you have any additional questions beyond what you've presented, please do reach out to us. But it is expected that everyone that's participating in this funding opportunity submits a tri-agency CV. So it is subjective. I'll be not honest, about that.
I can add a little bit.
Yeah, please go ahead.
To that. So,
sorry, sure.
Yeah, just to put in perspective the intent, and obviously Adrian can speak to it better than I can. The intent of the changes in the tri-agency CV is to basically provide you a narrative section, that supports your application. So how is it different? Well, this is a career support application. So think how best you can create a narrative that supports the reviewers to be able to say, this person deserves this award. So whereas before you had no opportunity to provide any narrative, this is now providing you with an opportunity to narrate. Think of the differences between a research project narrative and how you are putting together your CV to support your research versus a career support. Right? So that's the difference you will be able to add to your narrative CV.
All right, perfect. Thank you, everyone. For our next question, we have a two-parter. The first part is a very big picture question. So perhaps Charu or Adrian want to take this. In the future, do you anticipate that CIHR REDI continues to run every 3 years?
Like I said, this is every time so the intent is yes to run REDI. As you know, this is still very much under the strategic initiatives umbrella. The way the strategic initiatives umbrella run is that there's no dedicated pot of funding that's available, which is why the project competition runs twice a year, because there's a dedicated pot available in the CIHR budget. This is different because every time we start fresh and we build on what people are willing to put into the pot. So as you will see, last time there were 19 partners. This time there are 10 institutes and 2 external partners, so it's building that. The intent is to run it, 2 to 3 years. But then there's additional criteria. Whoever we bring in, do we have enough awards to be able to run 2 streams? Can we add a 3rd stream? Do we have enough? So there are other considerations, and then the eligibility criteria that have to be added. The intent is to keep running this program. I'll turn it over to Adrian because he's the corporate lead, and at the end of the day, he is responsible for delivering these and other programs.
The question well that, the first program, was highly successful based on the evaluation. And as Charu said, it took an extensive consultation with the Indigenous community to expand the program more broadly. So from my perspective anyways, the model is somewhat proven now. While it is a lot of strategic money, there has been corporate investment in both the first and second REDI. And so we're looking at how to make that a more sustainable approach. So is the right number of times to run REDI once a year, once every 2 years, once every 3 years? Like, I think we have to sort that out. Right now, it's more in the program creation, growing phase. And so what you're seeing now may not be what we ultimately land towards. And, I think the signs around application, number of applications, peer review comments will help inform some of that decision. So in the first competition, if I remember correctly, there were Charu, maybe 200 applicants for 50-ish or 40-ish awards. And the comments from the reviewers were there were more excellent people than we had awards, which to me is a good sign that the demand is there. And so we'll see how this one goes, and maybe the time between the next one will be a bit shorter depending on how we choose to either evolve the program or expand it.
Perfect. Okay, moving on to the second part of this question. It is, if I apply to this round and am successful, could I defer the award for a year? So I think that's a question for our PDD colleagues.
I'm sorry, Brittany, I can't remember who went to the last one, but case by case. So you would need to reach out to them. Sorry. Yeah.
Perfect. And then for our next question, a little bit more about the application itself. Any guidance on how long each section of the 10-page proposal should roughly be?
Maybe I'll jump in. And again, sorry, Brittany, but we do have guidance within ResearchNet for how long each section should be, but you don't need to stick to those. It's just those are guidance. So we do actually provide that within ResearchNet. So I would invite you to refer to those. But if you do have additional questions, please do reach out to us. Sorry, Brittany.
And then another question on the technical side of things. If you applied for both a CIHR postdoctoral fellowship and the REDI award, could you refuse the postdoctoral fellowship to accept the REDI award?
I can take this one. So yes, and you'll see in our funding opportunity that it does state that you can only hold one federal funding opportunity or one award at a time. So if you were to accept the REDI award, you would have to decline your Canadian Postdoctoral Researcher Award in order to move on with the REDI award.
Perfect, thank you. Just scrolling through to look for some more of our upvoted comments here. Question about clarifying what's included within the community engagement or knowledge mobilization fund.
Oh, that's a toughie.
Maybe I can jump in.
Yeah, you can jump in. I was going to say.
And I'll invite Chelsea to join in as well, because this was something that came up. We heard a lot more about this when we were doing Indigenous engagement, but it reminded us that, some of the other underrepresented communities should really have the same opportunity. So that's why we extended it to everybody. in terms of working with their communities. Now, it could be that your research project involves interactions with communities, as does frequently for Indigenous, and Chelsea will speak to more, I'm sure. But it's about involving your community, doing community work, knowledge mobilization. So depending on your project, not everybody may want to do this, but there's a cultural connection here that Chelsea will speak to, for especially for the Indigenous stream. Chelsea, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I think, no, I think you clarified that well. And was the question, Victoria, specific towards that $5,000 funding?
Yes, so for that supplemental funding, yes, I
Yes,
believe
and
that's
what it
what they
could
were
be
getting at.
specifically be used for? Yeah, so I think for the Indigenous candidates, it could be, of course, used for, as True said, cultural, even potentially cultural sort of events, Indigenous specific conferences, community engagement activities, all of those types of things. But maybe we could provide some additional, I'd be happy to provide some additional examples, particularly that we've seen in the past, even through our NEAR networks and our Indigenous mentorship networks, and how those types of allowances have been able to be used, if that's helpful.
Perfect.
And I will add, Victoria, that we do have those examples within the funding opportunity.
Okay.
So
Great.
things that haven't been mentioned is Indigenous language training, cultural awareness and sensitivity training, etc. So that's all on our within our funding opportunities. So I do thank the team for flagging that's available.
Perfect.
Folks.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everyone. For our next question, it has to do with your mentorship network. Is it acceptable to have someone on your mentorship network who is from outside of Canada?
Brittany, you want to take this one on?
Sure.
The answer is yes.
The answer is yes. Yes, it is fine to have someone who's from outside of Canada in part of your mentorship network. We're part of that, again, someone out of the maximum of 5 mentors on the application. Again, it's fine if it's one of the mentors or the mentors are outside of Canada.
Perfect.
Victoria, I'm noting that people are saying in the chat that you can sort by the most upvoted. Are you doing that already?
Perfect. Thank you. That will save some time on my end. Thank you for that. So our next question is, if one is a current postdoc at an institution, can they apply for the REDI award at the same institution, or does it need to be held at a different institution?
It doesn't matter the institution. Honestly, it doesn't. I'm sorry, I'm snacking right now. I'm a human just like the rest of you. Yeah, so the answer is no, it doesn't matter.
Perfect. And then next we have a question about the CV requirements for mentors. Vitaly, I believe you answered this one in your presentation, but just confirming that yes, the mentors also need to submit the tri-agency CV.
Before I take another bite, I'm going to look to my team and make sure that I was correct in what I said earlier. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I'll wait. They're typing right now. But while we're waiting, my understanding is that yes, all mentors do need to submit a CV. I'm confirming that that's exactly what we have in our funding opportunity. And thank you, Brittany, for coming online for that one. Hopefully that answered the question. And if I wasn't clear, yeah.
Perfect. All right. Next question has to do with changing institutions. If you apply while you're a postdoc at one affiliation and then change your postdoc position by the time the award is made, can you transfer the award to your new institution?
I can take this one, Victoria. So yes, there's no issue with changing your award location at the time of the award. So you would just have to submit an award change form. So when you get your acceptance, you'd submit this form, and your new institution would, of course, have to sign the form and endorse your application as well, since you'd be switching to a different institution than who signed for your initial application.
Perfect. And then related to that, we have a follow-up question. Can someone apply as a postdoc and then hold the award as a research associate if their circumstance changes?
I can take this one quickly as well.
Yeah,
Yes.
go ahead.
Yes, that's fine, because both of those are eligible. Again, in the eligibility criteria, both are fine. Both are listed as possible options for, again, at the time of the funding start date, being in one of those two positions.
Excellent. Next question we've got, would staying in the same lab decrease your chances of being awarded?
That's a tough one. And I would invite Sharu to chime in, but based off of my experience in listening into the discussions, it depends on how you articulate your proposal. But I'll leave it at that. And Sharu, please chime in.
Yeah, so, people my age, when we were told this, that, oh, you've got to change institutions and you can't stick around. But really, the narrative CV now provides you with a really great place to kind of explain why you are still there and what is it that you're doing. So it's really about the science. Then really, did you change your supervisors? Did you change institutions? Provide a compelling argument. Think of it, if you were evaluating this application, what would you like to see to say, of course, this makes sense that this person should be here? And then leave it for the reviewers to basically, evaluate that on the narrative. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so if I could maybe add to this.
Go ahead, Adrian, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm listening to the questions, and I think they're good questions because people really want to understand how to write a compelling application. But I would maybe offer 2 or 3 things. One, you're picking these mentors for a reason, and they should be reviewing your grant and providing you guidance with respect to how best to convince the peer reviewers that your application is compelling, right? There's no magic formula about how to write the application, about how long each section needs to be, because depending on what your background is, what your research is, there's going to be differences. You have to think about the evaluation criteria and really putting a compelling case to convince the peer reviewers that you're a compelling candidate. So I would encourage you to maybe worry a little bit less about some of these details, not that they're unimportant, and more about addressing that evaluation criteria and having people review your application who have participated in peer review. Maybe there's people that participated in the program last time, to really give you feedback on what some of the key elements are. And so you're asking questions about the CV, what goes in the application. Everything is complementary in the end, right? Everything needs to go together to feed your narrative around why you're a compelling candidate for this type of opportunity. And so I just did a session with early career researchers on grant writing, and a lot of the advice is always the same. Internal peer review, have other people review your grants, right? The peers are not going to necessarily have the in-depth expertise on the specifics of what you may be working on. So it's important to write your application in a way that can be easily digestible. So good questions, but we need to zoom out a little bit, I think.
I'll offer another insight from the last time, that a lot of the focus went into the research description, which is important. But remember, this is an award. This is not a research program grant. So even for your mentors, remind them that this is about the package that's being presented, because we're funding people who will very likely succeed as independent researchers. So yes, your research program, the description of the research is important, but equally important is who you present yourself to the reviewers, because they need to believe that of the 200 people who are applying, you're most likely to succeed in becoming an independent researcher. So it's an award. It's not a research program or research project. So remind whoever is reviewing your grant to review it from that perspective as well.
And Victoria, if I may, sorry, before you go
Absolutely.
on to the next question. So this review process is not done independently from CIHR staff. So we're happy and we do interject whenever things stray away from our processes and guidelines. So we do take your questions to heart, and we're going to be paying close attention to what's been raised so far. So thank you, Sharu and Adrian, for your contributions. And now over to you, Victoria, for the next question.
Thank you. Our next question is related to the research proposal. Should folks write one research plan for both their phase 1 and phase 2 portions of the award, or write a separate research plan for phase 1 and 2 separately?
I hate to do this, but Sharu, do you want to speak to
Yes.
this?
Yeah, so think about it. You know, phase 1, you're getting $70,000 for your support, and you're getting $20,000 for your research support. Phase 2, you're an early career investigator who's getting $120,000, you know, potentially for salary, but also for research support, and your institution is supporting you. So can you put one for both, or should you be putting 2? Right? Clearly, the first one is what will you do with that $20,000, and maybe a little bit help, you know, from other people in terms of gearing up towards your research program. And phase 2 is really, what is your research program going to be about? So could one be more detailed and lead into the second? Absolutely. But can you just put one that covers the 2? I don't know. Maybe you're more creative than I can think of.
Perfect. All right, our next question is a shorter answer. Who is included in racialized groups? So that's an eligibility question that we've got there for PDD.
Brittany?
Yeah, I can take this one, and if anyone wants to add, please go ahead. But for eligibility purposes, for stream 1, it's racialized women, racialized gender diverse people, and Black people, any gender that are eligible. I would encourage everyone to look in the FO. There is a decision tree tool. If you click on that, you're able to answer questions, and it'll tell you if you are eligible for the opportunity or not, based on, again, specific population groups and things like that. So I'd encourage everyone to take a look at that. And again, you can, and feel free to email the contact center as well with any specific questions around your situation. Thanks,
And
Victoria.
if I can add, Victoria and Brittany, so for this funding opportunity, we're using racialized as an alternative to the term visible minorities, which is what is used within the Employment Equity Act. So definitely Google that or search that online, and it will give you what we mean by the term racialized or visible minorities. The second piece is when it comes to gender, we mean gender, not sexual orientation. And I'm emphasizing this just based off of the questions we've been receiving, is we're looking at your gender for this funding opportunity, not what you prefer in terms of sexual orientation. So those don't exclude you, but that's not what we're looking at. So definitely reach out to us privately so that we're not answering you these questions via this webinar. So hopefully that helps clarify things. Over to you, Victoria.
Perfect. Next question also has to do with our application. Given that phase 2 is a continuation of phase 1, do we need every detail of phase 2 at the application stage?
Sharu, do you want to take this one on?
Yeah, so I mean, the way I answered people is, you know, when you're doing a research program or a project, There's the sort of immediate plan, and then there's sort of the larger context. So for phase two, like I was saying before, that think of phase one as something that's kind of gearing you up towards a larger program, right? So how does the phase one feed into that larger phase two? Because remember, in phase two, we are looking for you to be successful as an early career investigator. Number one, we're hoping you will transition into faculty position. Number two, we hope that as an early career investigator, you're going to get funding that will stabilize you into the academic ecosystem. So what would the phase two then look like, right? So making that argument that I'm going to do X, Y, Z for next 2 years, that feeds into my larger research program, that looks like this. Can you put like every, here's my aim 1, aim 2, aim 3. I don't know that that's necessary or needed. But again, maybe you have that very clear idea. So one of the other things that you can do is that we now have a track record of 43 people who are funded, right? So reach out to some of them because they've been very successful. Remember, Adrian just said that of the 200 people that applied, approximately 100 had excellent applications. So there's lots of good examples of excellent applications. Feel free to reach out to people to sort of say, what did you do? So that you get a pretty good idea of what that's like. I remember decades ago when I got an early career investigator award, I reached out to people in my institution and said, hey, you have this award. Can I take a look? Or how did you, put together your application? So I would encourage you to do that.
All right, moving on to our next question. Is the program only eligible for transition to faculty positions or any full-time research positions at an academic or health institution? So I believe this question is specifically looking at the eligibility of phase two institutions.
And that's great. And sorry, Sharu, but I would prefer that you answer this one.
Yeah, so again, I'm going back to the intent of the program. The intent of the program is that we want to increase diversity in our academic environment. Research or independent researchers who have fully funded programs. So if it looks like you are in a research institution where you are a principal investigator who has the same privileges as a faculty, right? So reach out to us and we can figure out one-on-one whether the kind of position that you're being offered, offers the same sort of capacity building. The goal is that we will fund people who will then have a cadre of, their own trainees, and we will amplify that effect. So are you going to fulfill the same roles that a research faculty would, or are you going to run like a research infrastructure, in which case you're not doing that? So it would depend really case by case. There are research institutions and hospitals where you're doing the same function, but you don't have that exact designation. So reach out to us as you move along this trajectory, and we can work with you to see what that means.
Perfect. Thank you. And then I know we're getting a little short on time, so I think we'll move to just one last question, which is, will the recording of this webinar be available? So I can say that we are recording this webinar and we do have the slides available. So if you're interested, please send us an email and we can circulate the slides to you. I know that was a very upvoted question, but just as we run into the last couple of minutes of our webinar here, I'll turn it back to Sharu for some closing remarks.
Yeah, just, we're very excited that we are able to do this this time, and especially excited to be able to introduce the Indigenous stream. We are hoping that there will be lots of applications. Please take a good look. It is a little bit complicated application because it's a award, not a project. There's a requirement for mentorship. There's different pools, so that we are aware that there are complexities to this, which is why we've given a lead time of 10 months or more. But don't delay the getting started on that too late, because we heard that last time. We had about 6-7 months, and people started too late thinking, oh, I have 6 or 7 months. to be able to put a good application in, you're going to need the time. So get started early, reach out to us. Last time we had a dedicated team answering questions. We'll try to do the same thing this time. But we have a lot more background information available now that you can right away get your questions answered as well. So I'll turn it over to Chelsea and Adrian for any final remarks.
Yeah, and I think True and I are discussing the possibility of adding another webinar that is specific to the Indigenous stream. And so if we do that, and I think we should, that will be true sometime in January. So I think just sort of stay tuned for that. And right, True, like we'll post something and put it out there.
Yeah. And Chelsea was just messaging me that, for Indigenous scholars, it's really important to stay close to their communities. So questions around, should I be changing institutions? Is that going to be required?
Yeah.
So there are nuances that are different.
There really are. And that's what I
Stream
think is
B.
really important in the narrative is, I look at myself many years ago, it was so important to not, I remember hearing the same thing. You need to go to different universities. That's really actually changed over the years. So I think of McMaster specifically, so many of my colleagues are from Six Nations of the Grand River. They've done all of their degrees at McMaster and are now a faculty member there. So, it's really important for many, Indigenous faculty that they do remain at an institution close to their home community. And so that's important. And you wouldn't be penalized for that, I would argue.
Adrian, any final comments?
No, like Char said, don't hesitate to reach out to the CIHR team if you have questions. And otherwise, bonne chance à toutes. Good luck, everyone.
Okay, and I guess I will pass it on to Grandfather Vince to close us in a good way. And again, wishing everybody thank you for attending. Thank you for your interest and good luck. And we want to be a partner with you in making sure that you can put in strong applications. So Grandfather Vince, over to you.
Sorry, unmute yourself, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not good at technology. I wish to offer my expression of a big thank you to CIHR, your readiness program, for the invite. I apologize for the technology difficulty that occurred earlier, but it's always great to hear from and also the possibilities to see other people from the vast country of Canada and the interests that the readiness program has to offer for all people that are willing to try and work towards the improvement of what life is, Bemadzwin, that good way of life for all of us. And we look for that, and I express that. So I will say in words of parting is to acknowledge each and every person here, your respective territories that you are here and that you are from and whatnot. From here, I'm a visitor of this Bikajwan. I'm from Bikajwan, but I'm a visitor from this Anishinaabe Kitigan Zibi territory, and I give thanks that I'm privileged to walk upon here for the past 50 years. I acknowledge and give thanks to each and every one of you, all your family members that you are a part of, apart from each and every day to fulfill your roles and responsibilities that are bestowed upon you each and every day. So I say to each and every one of you, with that virtual SAMO that was presented, I will, and I also have that SAMO in presence, but I will offer that to each and every one of you that took part today, and all the viewers and listeners, that you may have an opportunity to utilize these that have been offered to each and every one. So I say to all you in those four directions, to all those from the east, Wabanum, Miigwech, Jawin Minishtal, Kijaminadu, to all yous that are listeners and viewers that are from the south, Jawanam, Jawanaminishnag, Jamdadu, and all of you to viewers and listeners that are from the west, Epang Mishpuk, Jawanaminishnag, Jamdadu, to all those of the viewers and listeners from the north, Jiwidinam, we say, Jawan Ministag, Jamdadu. Miigwech, and enjoy your rest of your day, and all the very best to you in this final parts of this day, this season, the winter season that has come upon us, and happy, healthy season to each and every one of you. Miigwech. Thank you. Mercy.
Miigwech, grandfather Vince, and good luck, everyone.